Atlanta's rush hour traffic was at its worst when the call came in. Paramedic Sarah Martinez was finishing her routine shift paperwork when the emergency dispatcher's voice cut through the ambulance radio like a knife. Code red, Interstate 75 southbound, mile marker 42. Multi-vehicle collision with entrapment, minimum 6 victims trapped. Fire rescue ETA 35 minutes. Her partner Jake immediately hit the sirens. "Sarah, this is massive. 6 people trapped and no extraction equipment for half an hour," he shouted over the wailing emergency lights. But Sarah did something different. She calmly closed her patient files, took a deep breath, and began mentally preparing in a way that would shock everyone at the scene. Because what happened in the next 8 minutes would reveal who Sarah Martinez really was. But first, you need to know Sarah's secret. For 3 years, Sarah had been Atlanta Metro Emergency Services' most reliable paramedic. Always calm under pressure, always making the right call, always there when lives hung in the balance. Her colleagues thought it was just natural talent. They had no idea about the 10 years Sarah spent as a Marine Corps combat engineer. Welcome to Hidden Legends. Before we continue with this incredible story, tell us in the comments which state you're watching from. And if you believe stories like this deserve to be told, hit that subscribe button. Sarah Martinez, 34, had been working emergency medical services in Atlanta for 3 years. Every shift brought heart attacks, overdoses, car accidents, the usual emergencies that define urban EMS work. Her partner Jake considered her the best paramedic he'd ever worked with. "When I'm with Sarah, I know everything's going to be okay," Jake would tell other crews. "She's got this weird ability to stay completely calm when everything's falling apart." But Sarah's calm came from places most paramedics never experience. What her colleagues didn't know was that Sarah's training went far beyond medical school. Every morning at 6 a.m., Sarah would arrive at the station, check equipment, review protocols, and prepare for another 12-hour shift saving lives. Standard paramedic routine. Except Sarah's equipment checks were different, more thorough, more tactical. Other paramedics noticed Sarah's unusual approach to emergencies. "How do you always know exactly what to do?" they'd ask. "Training," Sarah would answer simply. "Every situation requires assessment and prioritization." But what kind of training creates that level of precision under pressure? The answer lay in Sarah's military service record. 10 years as a Marine Corps combat engineer with the 1st Combat Engineer Battalion, explosive ordnance disposal, battlefield medicine, tactical rescue operations in the world's most dangerous combat zones. Sarah had joined the Marines at 19, driven by a childhood dream of serving her country and helping people in crisis. Growing up in rural Georgia, she'd always been fascinated by rescue operations and emergency response. "I want to save lives when everything goes wrong," she told her military recruiter. "I want to be the person others can count on when there's nowhere else to turn." After basic training, Sarah's military career accelerated rapidly. Combat engineer school, explosive ordnance disposal training, advanced battlefield medicine, reconnaissance training. Sarah excelled in every program, particularly in high-stress rescue scenarios and improvised engineering solutions. Her specialty became vehicle extraction and structural collapse rescue, skills that would prove invaluable on a Georgia interstate. During her decade of active duty, Sarah deployed to Afghanistan and Iraq multiple times. Her missions included improvised explosive device disposal, vehicle extraction after IED attacks, structural collapse rescue operations, emergency battlefield medicine, combat engineering under fire. But her most critical training was something called multi-casualty extraction, the systematic rescue of multiple trapped victims simultaneously. In 2018, Sarah's unit responded to a building collapse in Kabul after a suicide bombing. 12 civilians were trapped in the debris. Sarah led a 14-hour rescue operation that saved every single person. Combat engineers aren't just about explosives, her commanding officer, Major Rodriguez, explained during her commendation ceremony. They're problem solvers. They make the impossible possible with whatever resources they have. Sarah had fully embraced this philosophy, limited resources, maximum creativity, never leave anyone behind. After 10 years, Sarah made the difficult decision to leave the Marines. PTSD symptoms from multiple combat deployments, a desire to serve in a peaceful environment, a calling to continue rescue work without the violence of war. "Why are you leaving?" Major Rodriguez asked during her exit interview. "Because I want to keep saving lives, but I want to do it where families don't have to worry about bombs and bullets," Sarah replied. Same mission, different battlefield. Paramedic training was almost insulting to someone with Sarah's background. Advanced trauma medicine, she'd performed battlefield surgery under enemy fire, crisis management, she'd coordinated multi-unit rescue operations in active combat zones, equipment improvisation. She'd saved lives using nothing but duct tape and creativity. But Sarah never mentioned her military background during EMS training. When instructors asked about her previous experience, she simply said, "I've always wanted to work in emergency medicine." When Atlanta Metro hired her, they got an exceptionally skilled paramedic. What they didn't know was they'd hired a decorated Marine combat veteran with expertise that no civilian training could provide. Thursday, October 12th, 3:47 p.m., Interstate 75, Atlanta. Sarah and Jake were returning from a routine hospital transport when the emergency call shattered the afternoon calm. Rush hour traffic was building, and the Georgia heat was making everyone irritable. Code red, Interstate 75 southbound, mile marker 42. Multi-vehicle collision with entrapment, minimum 6 victims trapped. Fire rescue ETA 35 minutes. All available units respond immediately. Jake hit the lights and sirens, but his face showed the concern every paramedic feels when facing a major incident without proper equipment. "Sarah, this is going to be a nightmare. 6 trapped victims and no hydraulic tools for over half an hour. People could die waiting for extraction equipment." Sarah's response was different than Jake expected. Instead of the usual concern, she was conducting what looked like a tactical assessment, mental calculations, resource evaluation, mission planning. "Copy that," Sarah said calmly. "Let's see what we're working with when we get there." But internally, Sarah was already switching modes, from paramedic to Marine combat engineer, from civilian emergency response to military rescue operation. The drive to Interstate 75 took 4 minutes through Atlanta traffic. Sarah spent those 4 minutes doing something Jake couldn't understand. She was inventorying every piece of equipment in their ambulance and calculating extraction possibilities. When they arrived at the scene, what Sarah saw would have overwhelmed most paramedics. 7 vehicles involved in a chain reaction collision, 2 sedans completely crushed, 1 SUV flipped upside down, a pickup truck wedged under a semi-trailer, debris scattered across 3 lanes of highway, and 6 people trapped inside twisted metal, waiting for rescue equipment that was still 30 minutes away. Jake stepped out of the ambulance and immediately felt overwhelmed. This is impossible without the fire department's hydraulic tools. But Sarah had already completed her tactical assessment. 6 victims, 3 critical extractions required structural weak points identified on each vehicle. Available resources, ambulance equipment, scene debris, other emergency vehicles. Time constraint, 30 minutes before proper equipment arrives. Sarah approached the first vehicle, a Honda Civic with its roof collapsed, trapping a young mother. "Ma'am, I'm Sarah, a paramedic. Can you hear me? We're going to get you out," Sarah said with the calm authority that comes from years of life-or-death operations. The woman was panicking. "I can't move my legs." "When is the fire department coming? I have 2 kids at home." Standard protocol said to wait for hydraulic rescue equipment, but Sarah wasn't thinking like a standard paramedic anymore. She was thinking like a Marine combat engineer who'd improvised solutions in Afghanistan when lives depended on creativity rather than equipment. "Jake, bring me the backboard, oxygen tank, and IV poles. We're building a leverage system." "A what?" Jake asked, confused. "Just trust me?" Using the ambulance stretcher frame, oxygen tanks as fulcrums, and medical equipment straps as leverage points, Sarah constructed an improvised extraction system. Applied physics and engineering principles, she'd learned diffusing IEDs and clearing vehicle obstacles in combat zones. 15 minutes later, the young mother was free. How did you know how to do that? The rescued woman asked in amazement. Problem-solving training, Sarah answered simply. But 3 more critical extractions remained, and time was running out. The second vehicle was the most dangerous. An SUV flipped completely upside down with a family of 3 trapped underneath. The vehicle's weight was slowly crushing the occupants. Fire department personnel had arrived but were setting up equipment. Ma'am, this situation requires specialized hydraulic equipment, Fire Captain Johnson explained. Understood, Sarah replied. But we can't wait 20 more minutes. There are children trapped. What happened next amazed every first responder at the scene. Using principles of structural engineering and improvised stabilization, Sarah created a support system using debris from the accident scene, spare ambulance equipment, and even other emergency vehicles as anchor points. She directed Jake and arriving paramedics in a coordinated extraction operation that looked more like a military rescue mission than standard EMS protocol. 25 minutes after the initial call, all 6 victims were successfully extracted. Not a single fatality. Every person transported to the hospital in stable condition. Fire Captain Johnson approached Sarah as they were cleaning up. Ma'am, I've been in rescue operations for 15 years. That level of improvised extraction expertise. Where did you train? Sarah hesitated. Her secret was about to become public. Military background, she said quietly. Which branch? Marines. Combat engineer, 1st Combat Engineer Battalion. Complete silence from the rescue crew. The paramedic they'd worked with for 3 years was actually a decorated Marine combat veteran with specialized rescue training that exceeded anything civilian emergency services could provide. Marines? Jake asked in disbelief. You were a Marine? For how long? 10 years active duty, multiple deployments, explosive ordnance disposal and tactical rescue specialist. The rescued families gathered around, wanting to thank the woman who'd saved their lives with military precision and civilian compassion. I knew you were special, said Jennifer, the first woman Sarah had extracted, but I had no idea you were a real hero. Ma'am, I'm still the same person. I'm still your paramedic. I just use different training to help people. Word of Sarah's military background spread through Atlanta's emergency services community within days. Respect and admiration replaced the casual collegial relationships she'd maintained. Fellow paramedics, firefighters, and police officers saw her differently now, not just as an exceptional colleague, but as a combat veteran who'd chosen to continue serving. How do you go from Marines to paramedic? Asked rookie EMT Marcus during a station meeting. Both jobs are about the same thing, Sarah explained. Saving lives when everything goes wrong. The methods are different, but the mission is identical. Sarah's story resonated beyond Atlanta's emergency services. Local news picked up the story. Social media shared videos of the rescue, but Sarah remained focused on her daily work, responding to emergencies and saving lives. The families she rescued that day on I-75 stay in contact. Jennifer, the first extraction victim, sends Sarah cards every year on the anniversary of the accident. You gave me the chance to watch my children grow up, she writes. I'll never forget what you did. The family from the overturned SUV, parents Mike and Lisa, children Emma and Tyler, visit Sarah at the fire station every Christmas. Our kids are alive because of your training and courage, Lisa always tells her. Sarah's transformation that day represented something larger than individual heroism. It demonstrated how military training translates into civilian service, how warriors become protectors in new ways, how the same skills that save lives in combat can save lives on American highways. I'm not a soldier anymore, Sarah tells people who ask about her service, but the warrior mindset never leaves. It just finds new ways to serve. The commitment to leave no one behind remains constant. The mission continues, only the uniform changes. Sarah's story isn't unique among America's veterans. Across the country, former military personnel serve in civilian emergency roles: paramedics, firefighters, police officers, nurses, teachers. They bring skills developed in the world's most challenging environments to protect and serve their communities. hidden military backgrounds quietly contributing to civilian emergency services. Former warriors applying combat experience to save lives in hospitals, schools, and streets across America. Every day, veterans like Sarah respond to emergencies with training most people never receive. They don't announce their military service. They don't expect recognition. They simply serve, using skills developed in faraway places to protect people close to home. The next time you see an ambulance racing to an emergency, remember Sarah's story. Remember that the paramedic inside might be a former Marine who learned rescue operations in Afghanistan. The firefighter climbing that ladder might be an Army veteran who cleared buildings in Iraq. The police officer directing traffic might be a Navy corpsman who saved lives on aircraft carriers. America's veterans don't stop serving when they leave the military. They transform their service. They adapt their skills. They find new ways to protect and defend. Hidden legends exist to tell these stories, stories of quiet heroism, stories of military training applied to civilian service, stories of warriors who become healers, protectors, and everyday heroes. If Sarah's story moved you, share it. Subscribe for more hidden legends. Help us continue telling the stories of veterans who serve in ways most people never recognize. Because the greatest heroes often serve in the most ordinary moments. They drive ambulances, they teach children, they protect communities, they save lives. And most of the time, nobody knows they're heroes at all until someone's life depends on their extraordinary training. Until 8 minutes on a Georgia highway reveal who they really are. Until Hidden Legends and tells their story. Share your own veteran stories in the comments. Do you know a veteran serving quietly in your community? Tag someone who needs to hear Sarah's story. Subscribe for more hidden legends. And remember, heroes are everywhere, often hiding in plain sight.